got that done. Hello, and welcome back to the channel. Back in with some Diablo 4. I know I've been away for a while, but kind of took a break from YouTube a little bit just to have some, personal time and all that, editing and recording, and, you're playing games, but at some point it's, feel like a task, and I don't want to make it, make YouTube feel like a task. So take breaks here and there just to give myself a chance to, play games just on my personal time. But I've been playing Diablo 4 for the most part, most of this time, and I am in World Tier 4, level 81, as you can see. And today I would like to bring to you my World Tier 4 endgame build for Barbarian. Now, my main skill is Hammer of the Ancients. This is a Hammer of the Ancients build, and I'm going to show you everything that I use to decimate monsters and, have good survivability and, it's pretty much cruise the World Tier 4. I see some people don't like the style of Diablo 4 versus Diablo 3. Diablo 3 was much more simpler, just get a bunch of legendaries and, high legendary drops and, a lot of hordes. Like, it's pretty much simple. The mechanics are pretty simple. How you do things are pretty simple. And Diablo 3. Diablo 4 is a little more intricate. It's a little more, you have to have a good set in order to, get through this game, especially in the higher world tier. So this build will work for you, World Tier 1 through 4. Any variation of the build, I feel, will work for you, as long as you have the right skills and everything, set up. And this is my version. I know there's probably other versions out there. There are some other things that I might want to try, but my current layout, is, doing me justice. So I guess let's go over the abilities and skills first. I won't go over the Paragon tree just yet, but I'll show bits and pieces of that as we go along. So the first skill, basic skill, where you normally start in the tree, I like to use Frenzy. Frenzy is a dual wield skill. If it hits, you gain attack speed, and in rank 3 it goes up to 60%. I only have one rank of this because obviously this is a Hammer of the Ancients build. A lot of our damage is not going to come from the basic skill. It's mainly going to come from Hammer of the Ancients, so we only put 1 point into that so we can save points later on in the tree. How would you call it? The sub component to the skill, while Frenzy is granted 60% bonus attack speed, it also generates 2 additional flurries. So in total we'll have six fury per hit. So that's what that's giving us there. And the most important thing I like about this skill is you gain 8% damage reduction for each stack of Frenzy you currently have. So this gains 3 stacks, so we'll have 24% damage reduction when it's at level 3. So we're going to be using our basic skill to generate Fury, so that's going to give us 24% damage reduction as we generate Fury. So having a nice defense skill, especially as a Barbarian, very good to have, because you're going to be, you know, in the mix in hordes and groups, taking a lot of hits. So you're going to have your damage reduction pretty good, and that's just the start right here. 24% damage reduction. And the coup de grace, Hammer of the Ancients. Slam your hammer down with the Fury of the Ancients, dealing 8,000, roughly 9,000 damage. So that's our core skill. That's when we're going to be, you know, spamming to get rid of everything. All the baddies. We're just going to be spamming this as much as we can to wipe out groups. So for the sub skills, gain 3% more fury for 5 seconds for each enemy damaged by Hammer of the Ancients, stacking up to 10 times. So Hammer of the Ancients it can be a massive AoE skill. So as we're damaging enemies, the more we hit, you know, we want to be in the middle, so all that damage, you know, spreads outward. I noticed Hammer of the Ancients kind of slams upward. The damage will go upward. I'll show you what I mean when we get into some, you know, get into a dungeon or something. But it kind of goes upwards, but it does like spread out a bit. Like I was using dual wield. What was this? Double swing. I was using this at first when I was going through the game, just to try something different, you know. Let's see if I can make something of this core skill. But, you know, it only covers about 180 degrees, and it doesn't have much range. So in a lot of Diablo games, it's good to have a good AoE to wipe out enemies as quickly as possible. So, you know, you don't get, you know, surrounded and flanked and, you know, just disaster happens. So Hammer of the Ancients is a better AoE skill, and I switched to that, and I've been loving it, you know, ever since. So Hammer of the Ancients, the second sub skill, deals 1% additional damage for each point of fury you had when using it. So, you know, if we have no resources and no fury in the pool, 1% for each point. So most likely it goes up to 100, just, you know, under normal circumstances. So obviously if we have a full stack of fury, it'll do 100% more damage. But, you know, as we build our fury, the damage increases, you know, for Hammer of the Ancients. I didn't go with this one because overpower, it doesn't trigger a lot. There are some skills that you can use to get it to trigger, but, you know, I can get 30% more damage from other resources. So I'd rather have the skill where I can get more than 30% damage out of Hammer of the Ancients. So that's why I went with this selection for Hammer of the Ancients. We go down our defensive skills. I chose Rallying Cry. I'm flip-flopping between Challenging Shout and Rallying Cry for Endgame. Challenging Shout, it gives you 40% damage reduction for 6 seconds. Sub skills, Challenging Shout gets you 20% more life, bonus life. And I was using Challenging Shout where you gain 3 fury every time you take damage. I have some skills set up where when I get hit, I'll generate resource, but for some reason this is kind of like it's not doing good for me. So I went with Rallying Cry. It gives me Unstoppable as well, which is a good skill to have in your builds in case you get stuck by a crowd control skill from an enemy. There's a lot of crowd control in Diablo 4, and that will get you wiped out. So Unstoppable is a great tool to have, at least on one skill. You know, even if it's something you don't use a lot, you know, for me, I don't use this a lot until I get to like a boss or like a horde with like a lot of elites. So I'll pop this along with you know, a bunch of other skills to just wipe them out real quick. But Rallying Cry increases 30% movement speed, resource generation by 40% for 6 seconds, and bonus, allies gain it for 3 seconds. So it's a good tool to have for groups. They can generate more resource. You'll generate more resource, so you'll be able to get through mobs pretty quickly. As I mentioned before, it gives you unstoppable when you pop it as sub skills. And I went with generating more fury and additional fury, 20% additional resource generation. So if I pop this, you know, not generating fury and I feel I'm in trouble, I can pop this, get a nice pool of fury, and, you know, spam Hammer of the Ancients and just wipe everything out. So Rallying Cry, it's a pretty good tool, resource generation and getting out of crowd control. So that's why I went Rallying Cry. Some skills in defensive, I also put on Thorns, as well as the sub skill with it. When enemies hit me, they bleed 10% of my Thorns for 5 seconds, and that's very important. And I'll show you why as we go on through the rest of the set. But added Thorns. Thorns is good, especially for Barb too. You know, it's especially good for ranged enemies. You know, the melee guys will get in front of you and block you from getting to the ranged enemies, which try to pick you off. And if you got Thorns, you know, they can kill themselves while you deal with, you know, all the melee riffraff in front of you. So I didn't put a lot of Thorns on the build, but it helps. It helps, even though it's not a lot, because this does go based on your hit points, and as a Barb, you should have a decent amount of hit points, so you can just, you know, take a lot of hits. So we'll move on down to brawling skills. I went with Warcry. I probably could mix this up a bit. Probably don't need Warcry as much now, but I like it because it gives me 18% buff for 6 seconds, and since it's a shout, it also applies to anybody having my group, so they'll also receive the bonus. I only put 3 skill points into this because you can get a lot of damage increase from legendary skills and skills from the armor and jewelry itself. So I took 2 points out and distributed it elsewhere. You know, the tree is pretty tight in Diablo 4. You can't just, you know, buy up everything and just, you know, vary different builds like that. You have to have your set build going in, and you're only limited to X amount of points. So they're pretty, you know, pretty tight when it comes to that. Like, you have to have a solid build. So some skills you'll have to find where you're comfortable at. Just putting in a few points here and there if it's not something you're going to use often, but something you might need down the line if you're fighting a boss or a giant horde or something like that. So that's something you have to consider when making your build in Diablo 4. What points am I going to use for the most, and which points am I going to use, you know, halfway, and what points am I going to use just for, oh, I can have 1 point here for this, 1 point here for that. So you have to, you know, make the tough choice and figure out how to distribute your points so that you get the best out of your build. So Warcry, get a damage buff, grants me berserking for 4 seconds as well, because I like berserking. It's a free 25% damage increase. If at least 6 enemies are nearby when I cast it, gives me additional 10% damage increase. So Warcry is very good for damage buffs. If we're fighting a boss That's pretty tough, pretty thick. We need to, get them out the way quick. Our first, goal wasn't good enough, so we gotta pop that to, hey, I need more damage. Let me get them out of here real quick. That's pretty good to use. So, in the same tree, I went with aggressive resistance, gain 3% damage reduction while berserking, and I mainly went here just to get this. Fury generation increased by 18% while berserking. So we're gonna be berserking. We're gonna be in berserking state a lot. So with that, we're gonna need good fury generation. We're gonna need good resource generation. So that's why I have this tree activated, so I can get to fury generation, so we can get more of it, so we can keep getting our core skill, Hammer of the Ancients, again and again. So we don't have to keep waiting around. We don't have to wait long to keep getting our core skill back. So that's why I went with, that's why I activated this to get here. So moving on to the weapon mastery skills. These skills are basically from armor pieces. That's why these are lit up. That's why they're purple, because they're, additional points from armor pieces. I couldn't re-roll them because it was something else that I wanted that I felt was more important. But this is why these are purple. This is purple, but it's at level 10. As you can see, item contribution, I have 2 skills on my equipment that's boosting this 7 points. But Death Blow is very good for the build because it's a party starter and an ender. So Death Blow, 15 seconds. The charge cooldown is 15 seconds. Attempted killing strike, dealing roughly 19,000 damage to enemies in front of you. Now this does hit multiple enemies, so that's what makes Death Blow, really good too. If this kills an enemy, the charge is refunded. So we kill somebody with Death Blow, the cooldown instantly refreshes. So you can basically spam this as long as it kills something. That's what makes it so good. So the modifiers on it: 100% increased damage to bosses. This is where I say it's a good ender, because the fact that if you get the right circumstances in play, Death Blow can basically put a huge stamp on a boss. I've ended bosses with this thing pretty well. Or, since we're in World Tier 4 and they have more health, I've dealt chunky damage to bosses with this. And it's very good on, just hard elites that, don't want to go away. It's very good too. So if it damages at least one enemy, I gain Berserking for 3 seconds. So this is where it's a good party starter. As I said, we're going to be Berserking a lot. So I get to a mob, I find one of the weaker ones, and I slap them with this. Bam, now we're instantly Berserking. So instantly Berserking, instant 25% damage increase. Just right there. So this is a good party starter and ender, Death Blow right here for my build. So if you try to build out, you'll see what I mean. You'll see what I mean too when we go into a dungeon and try this out. So Pit Fighter, I've went to this tree because it has some things that I like for my build. You deal 9% increased damage to close enemies and gain 6% damage reduction. Yeah, right. So basically, enemies close, we're barbs. We like to be face to face with our opponents. So they're close, 9% damage increase, and distant enemies, less damage from them because, they're going to be in the back being little, cowards trying to pick us off. So less damage from them. Went with No Mercy, 9% increased critical strike against, well, critical chance against immobilized, stun, and slow enemies. So a lot of this build is going to be focused on stunning enemies so we can get more damage on them. Slowed enemies kind of come second, but you know, it's useful because you know they like to run a lot in Diablo 4, especially when you're a melee character and you try to run up on them and finish them. They'll just do some Street Fighter move and you know just get out the way, which is pretty clever. But that's why you know crowd control is very important in this game. You know, as far as like getting rid of enemies is very important, and you know survivability as well to keep them from attacking you and wiping you out and giving you a little breather, you know, so you can recover health and or get more damage on them. But since we're a bard, you know, most of our attack goes from strength, so we won't have that high, you know, crit chance since that goes through dexterity. So more increased crit strike chance is always good for a bard because we're gonna try to shell out massive damage. And Hammer of the Ancients is more just burst damage, you know, right on the spot. As far as damage wise goes, we don't really do a lot of tick damage, you know, damage over time really. It's just more burst damage. And I have some skills I experiment with where I can get some damage over time effects, but right now the structure of the build is where I like it, so you know I don't really need to add or switch that skill on. But I'll show you what that skill is, you know, a little bit. One with hamstring just as an extra point, just to slow enemies. So if one of my weapons has more damage to slow enemies, like 30-50%, let's put this on so when I hit them when they bleed they're slow. So that goes back to this, when they bleed. So when they hit me, when enemies hit me, they're gonna bleed. So I hit them back, now they're slowed. So now they're not going anywhere, you know, they're not gonna get far from me. So 10% is just fine, you know, don't need a whole bunch. I could move it, but you know, I've hit enemies where, you know, they just like, okay, you know, just finish me off. So I like keeping that on. So ultimate skill, I went with Call of the Ancients. I know some people might say, oh, why don't you go with Wrath of the Berserker? But Call of the Ancients allows me to just literally spam Hammer of the Ancients. Like, once the 3 Ancients are called out, the one that Talic spins rapidly, they give me I'm sorry, it's Corlic. When Corlic damages enemies, I gain 10 fury each time, and he damages a lot. So I'll be at full frenzy the whole time they're out, so I can literally just keep spamming Hammer of the Ancients while they're out. So that's kind of why I like, and they do damage. They're doing damage at the same time, so it's kind of why I went with Call of the Ancients. Rather, the Berserker could be, you know, a good tool because every time I spend 50 fury, the damage, I get an increase in the damage bonus, but it's only 10 seconds. That's the only problem. It's only 10 seconds. Now, 10 seconds is a long time at Diablo, but it's kind of short for an ultimate, so that's why I went with Call of the Ancients. I might experiment with it and see, you know, how I like it, but that's, you know, why I went with Call of the Ancients rather. These little side trees, I went with Temper Fury, Maximum Fury, get more Fury. And so basically if I'm at full Fury, I'll be at 109. I think Hammer of the Ancients is 35, has a 35 cost. So if I'm at full Fury, I can get 3 Hammer of the Ancients off. Well, 3 core skills off, you know, consecutively. So Invigorating Fury, heal 9%, maximum life each time for each 100 Fury spent. So basically we're gonna be trying to spam, Hammer of the Ancients. So as we're, getting that off, every 100 Fury we spend, we get 818 life back. So there's not as many health recovery, skills in Diablo 4 as it was in Diablo 3. So you have to, wherever you can get health gain, take it. Especially if it's easy to use and it's, basically tied into what you're going to be doing anyway, which is using your core skill to do damage. So might as well find whatever health recovery you can get. Side tree also got Wallop. Skills using bludgeoning weapons deal 50% increased damage if they're stunned or vulnerable. So we're going to be doing a lot of vulnerability and stun in this set. So that's why I have this, so we can get increased damage from that. And skills using bludgeoning weapons has 30%, up to a 30% chance to stun enemies for 3 seconds, or up to a 45% chance using two-handed bludgeoning weapons. So I like the speed of flurry. So, and plus, as I mentioned at the start, we get the 24% damage reduction. I feel that's worth it, than using just a big two-handed mace. Some reason it's just like, it's so slow, it just kind of bugs me. So I'd rather go with, the two-handed maces, and it's been working out for me. So the key passives, I went with Berserk. I might switch over to Unbridled Rage since it deals with the core skill, but I like this because we're always going to be in Berserk, and this increases Berserk's maximum duration by 5 seconds and increases the damage bonus by 25%. So when Berserk is active, instead of 25%, we're going to be at 50% damage increase. So we're always going to be active, doing an extra 50%. It doesn't take much for me to go on Berserk. So I kind of like this because it's easy to, use and utilize, versus this. I have to, I get an extra 135% increase to my core skill, but it costs double. So I will have to focus on mainly resource generation and fury cost reduction. So I have to build how fast I can get my resources. Oh, that's nice. So I will have to focus more on getting my resource fast and have it cost less, so I can get more uses out of my core skill, so I can use it more than just one time. So, but I like this better because 50% damage bonus increase, and I can spam the move more. But I'm gonna try this because I think I'm at a point where I can get more of my core skill off despite the double cost. So I might try that. I'm not going to go through the entire Paragon tree. I'll just go through the glyphs that I'm using. I'm using Mortal Draw for right now. Plus 59% damage with skills that swap to new weapons. And the bonus, swapping weapons has an 18% chance to cause the skills damage to critically strike. As I mentioned before, as a barb, getting off those crits are very good since we're not in the dexterity tree. So, trying to get those crits off for those big hits. So, and the other one I'm using is Exploit, 17.8% vulnerable damage. When an enemy is damaged by you, they become vulnerable for 3 seconds. It's gonna happen more than once every 20 seconds per enemy. So vulnerable, as I mentioned before, is also, we're gonna be doing a lot of vulnerable and stun. So those two things combined will help us shell out a ton of damage. So this makes it easier for us to wipe out enemies when they're vulnerable. Vulnerable is the new mechanism in this game, and you should be exploiting it as much as you can. I also forgot, there was one more thing I did in this tree right here. Add pressure point. Core skills have a 30% chance to make enemies vulnerable for 2 seconds. So since we have a good AoE, when we use it, we have a chance to make enemies vulnerable every time we use it. So we're trying to keep the enemies vulnerable, and you know, when they get and stunned as well. So that's the whole mindset behind this build. Massive damage and even more damage when they're stunned and vulnerable. So that is the basis behind everything. So go over our gear real quick. On the helm, I'll just go over the legendaries. You can all skim through the other skills that I have, but first one, the skill, legendary skill. Basic skills grant 20% damage reduction for 6 seconds. Basically, we're using our basic skills to generate fury. So while we're doing that, we're getting an additional 20% damage reduction. For the chest, heal 74 life per second for each close enemy, up to 245 life per second. So we're going to be near enemies. The more there are, we'll have a 245 life per second while they're near us, so we have life recovery from that too. On the arms, we have deal 9% increased damage for each second you stand still. So we don't need to really move when we use Hammer of the Ancients. We have to just sit there and just keep spamming as we have our resources available. So when we sit still spamming it, our damage increases. So up to 30%. So we're getting a buff as we sit and stand and, you know, not do anything. So for the waist, I have damage and elite. Enemy grants you a barrier, absorbing 3,400 damage for 10 seconds. This effect can only happen once every 30 seconds. Defensive option, basically. So when you're going against elites, they hit pretty hard. So, you know, as you're going in, you have the option to have a barrier so you're not just getting wiped out from them, getting crowd controlled, everything like that. You have a chance to just go in, do your thing, set up shop, and you know, you won't have to worry about taking an exorbitant amount of damage. For the greaves, we have your weapon mastery skills have an additional charge, that is death blow. Damaging enemy with a weapon mastery skill has up to 42% chance to stun them for 2 seconds. So, as I mentioned, you know, the big thing about this build, stun, vulnerability. So even our weapon mastery skill now has a chance to stun. 2 seconds is a nice window to, you know, get that extra damage off real quick. So for my two-handed bludgeon weapon, distant enemies have an 80% chance to be stunned for 2 seconds. When they hit you, you deal an 80% increased stun damage to stun enemies. Now that is huge because we're going to be trying to stun enemies a lot. So an extra 80% damage increase is huge. Huge on top of everything else that we're, you know, all the, you know, skills that are on the weapon. As you can see, we have an additional 52.5% stun damage on top of the legendary skill. So just right there, that's 132% damage if an enemy is stunned. So they're going to take massive damage from that. For our two-handed weapons, Hammer of the Ancients quakes out, dealing 48% of its damage to enemies. So I went with this. As I mentioned at the start, Hammer of the Ancients kind of shoots upward, but this lets it quake outward, more of an AoE than like an upward, you know, like 45-degree cone. You know, we get the extra AoE from this. So I tried it with 100% of its damage, but it didn't seem like 100% of it was getting distributed. So I just went with this so we can put a different skill on our other two-handed weapon. So other offhand weapon attacking enemies with a base skill increases the next damage of your core skill cast by up to 10% up to 30%. So as we're using our basic skill on top of gaining damage reduction, we're also building our core skill damage up to 30% potentially. Now it doesn't have to go up to 30%. We can hit them once and get 10%, but obviously 30% is the gusto. So while, you know, maintaining our damage reduction, we're also building up our core skill to do massive damage. So other two-handed weapon skills deal up to 30%, 36% increased damage based on your available primary resource when cast, receiving the maximum benefit while you have full primary resource. So basically, as we're building our resource up, depending on where that small globe is at, how much fury we have in there. If it's at half, we'll deal up to 18% additional damage. Our skills, rather, that were used, mainly Hammer the Ancients. So as we're building up fury, it's also building up the damage it's going to do. So that's why I put this on here. I put this on here because when you put legendary skills for the barb on two-handed weapons, they gain double the stats. So that's why I put this here. If I would have put it here, I only got 18%. So wanted to get more damage out of our skills. So for our amulet, direct damage against bleeding enemies has up to a 45% chance to stun them for 2 seconds. Now that goes back to the thorn damage skill, which causes enemies to bleed. So I don't have to do much to get them to bleed. Enemies that's hit me, and they're going to bleed. So as they bleed, I have a 45% chance to stun them because they're bleeding. So as I mentioned, this is a stun vulnerable build. So they're bleeding, I hit them, they're stunned. As they're stunned, they're going to take additional damage from being stunned. So you don't have to do much, just need a little bleed. It's a little bit of bleeding, and they'll make themselves bleed by hitting you, and then they're going to suffer for it. So that's why I have that skill on there. For one of my rings, you have an 8% chance, increased dodge chance versus enemies affected by damage over time effects, aka bleed. When you dodge, you gain 9 of your primary resource. Now, this is wonderful for building fury when you're crowded by a large mob and they're hitting you, they're bleeding. They're going to increase your dodge chance, and as you dodge, you're going to get resource back. So you're going to dodge the damage and gain resource to wipe them out and put them out of their misery. So that's why I put that on there. And for the last piece, after spending 100 fury, your next weapon mastery skill deals 100% increased damage. So this is Death Blow. This was done for Death Blow. Death Blow already does double damage to bosses, elites, champions, what have you. So why not give it an extra 100% damage increase on top of that? So that's why I say I was able to wipe some bosses out with this thing, because, you know, it's already doing double, and now it's going to do 100% of the double that it's already doing. So it's a pretty good ender, I'll say. And from this skill over here, we get 2 charges of it. It only originally comes with 1 charge, but this gives us 2 charges of it. So we get 2 chances to knock somebody out with this. So that's pretty much the whole layout, the whole build that I have. I would say pause the video if you want to just look at the stats that I have on, you know, each piece. All of my pieces are ancestral, as we are in World Tier 4, as you can see underneath the map. So, you know, this is, and you won't think this is a Fugazi video. So, I'm just gonna run this build into a test build. Well, you know, just basically show you how the build works. gonna go to a dungeon that I need to do because I'm trying to get more Paragon points. So we'll just knock one of those out. All right, so go in here and let's have some fun. I do have 9k HP. I want to get to like 10, 12k if I can. And you can see right there,
I'm low on fury.
death blow. It's the party started. You know, we're in berserking instantly when we hit death blow. Doesn't matter if it kills an enemy, but as long as it hits. So as long as you make it hit, then you're fine. So, and due to my
Low on fury.
from my Paragon tree, I have berserking skills active so that you know, we can get the most out of berserk. Since we're gonna be in berserk a lot, so. As I mentioned before, enemies like to run a lot, and that was actually charged up from all the core skills we were using. So that skill was charged up. Destroy the idol of the overseer and the Seaborn Goddess. Okay, I think we can do that. Sometimes Hammer the Ancients goes off more than once, even if I tap it once. Not sure what that's attributed to, but you know.
I'm out of fury.
You can see our resource generation is pretty solid, so don't have to worry about that too much. And that's from one of the skills, you know, being in berserk, 18% fury generation, and also on my rings I also have a lot of fury generation bonuses on my rings. Get rid of that barrier. Yeah, from the glyph, basically, even if they hit us, they'll go into vulnerable. So we don't really have to do much, but it is only for 3 seconds. So, you know, ranged enemies can kind of be a pain because they'll hit us, you know, before we can get to them sometimes. But luckily, when we use our core skill, we have 30% chance to put them in vulnerable state as well. So basically, we're just trying to just get all the baddies out of here real fast. More just like a quick kill kind of build, you know. If you want damage over time, you can add a legendary skill that will give you 20% to, I'd say, 20 to 30% chance you know, deal bleed damage based on the whatever you hit them with. So I am a fan of, you know, the bleed damage, but it's not really necessary for the build. So it's not really necessary for the build. So that was weird. But, you know, the damage, you know, ooh, that was a nasty hit. The damage over time effects are pretty good to have.
I need time to do that.
There we go. Oh, they won't. Thought they would just let me, you know, come in here and go back to the, you know, zip to the other side, but
Be careful!
oh. Oh, thanks for the heads up. Oh, there's more? Yeah, like right there, I didn't even, you know, tap how many inches twice, just kind of happened. Just gotta get rid of the pimps.
Look out!
Look out. Champs.
I need more fury.
Oh, got some money. Take that. Also, if you need money, feel you have enough resources, you know, as far as from salvaging equipment.
Not ready yet. I'm out of fury.
That. Yeah, just sell equipment if you feel, you know, you need money and you're not generating enough money. Selling equipment can give you a lot of money very quickly, especially in World Tier 4.
Not ready yet. This way.
As you saw, I popped Rallying Cry because that one guy, what do you call him? Champion, put up the little wind thing to slow me down, basically. So instead of being slowed down, you know, I just pop that and, you know, I'm just go and bash him in the face. All right, so we did the one task, so now we can go through the magic door. And who are you? What's more of you? Yeah, I shouldn't be there. So we can go through the magic door now and pick up this gold. I usually don't pick up sacred items anymore because kind of like useless at this point. Because it's not gonna improve my build. So I might as well just pick up, you know, all the ancestrals, even if they're rare.
Not ready yet. I need more fury.
Yeah, even if they're rare, they're worth some good money, so I'll just pick them up if they're ancestral. All the sacred ones aren't really useful to you anymore at World Tier 4.
Brothers and sisters of the Triune, You are hereby called upon to witness the
Unless you
unveiling
need
of a
resources.
new weapon in our fight to win
salvaging.
Sanctuary. In a feat of necromantic expertise, our members have patched together a fearsome warrior, sculpted from the bodies of fallen legends. The cathedral boasts of their angel. We now have a contender. He shall slumber until called upon. On the next blood moon, gather at the altar and awaken him with us.
And one thing I am wondering is if there's a unique weapon.
Not ready.
Right. That is spec'd around, you know, Hammer of the Ancients. I would really love that. Honestly, I would really love that.
Please, help us get out of here.
I'm sorry, I can't do that. I'm not a fan of that event because I'm a barbarian and kind of got screwed over the whole, you know, saving everybody event, because what they're gonna do is spread all the enemies out and they're just gonna pick off those people and you're just gonna be frustrated. It's gonna be frustrated and like, what the hell?
Don't have enough fury.
There's that. What is this? Oh god.
I need time to do that.
Guy's gonna make me work.
Ready yet. I'm out of fury.
Alright, we got that done. Kingmaker, War Sword. I'll take that. Let's move on. What are we doing? Travel to the Spelk something? The Sepulchrum?
Low on fury.
There we go. I was trying to kill him much sooner, but I missed my window for the the vulnerable period. I missed that period, and I kind of dropped the ball on that. But yeah, it's pretty much my build for World Tier 4, Barbarian, Diablo 4. Pretty beefy, got good survivability, good damage, and good resource gain, defense. I feel it has everything. Everything you need to, you know, blast through World Tier 4. The Nightmare dungeons are pretty manageable as well. Once you get there, you have health. You have health recovery and defense. A strong finisher, a strong core skill, good damage all around. So, once you get started, most things don't survive. So, pretty much good to go at that point. In the Nightmare dungeons, you have more to worry about than just, getting through the dungeon. You have to worry about basically the modifiers on the dungeon. What enemies can do and what they can't do. So, but this build will cover everything, even if they have some resistance to what the build is structured around. You can kill them pretty quickly, unless they're just invulnerable to everything. But even then, like, you'll have enough damage to just do what you have to do regardless. So I'd like to thank you for joining me on this video. I hope you find the build useful. I hope you take some bits and pieces, even if you want to try some other things in your own build, but you like the blueprint, the structure of my current Barbarian build, Hammer the Ancients build to be specific. So this will get you through World Tier 4 with ease, and you can get through Hell Tides and Nightmare dungeons and not have to really worry about too much, because you'll just wipe out everything. And if you get lucky, just I'd say if you can, try to get your crit up pretty good. That way you can one-shot bosses and all that, because I'm pretty sure you saw some of those 1 million hits, and I'm pretty sure that got you hot and sweaty. So I'd like to thank you for watching. Again, do the proper thing, like, share, subscribe. I'm going to try to bring out more Diablo content, as I heard season 1 is coming, and I will be probably playing Druid for the season, and I will probably try Necromancer for hardcore, because melee characters kind of have it rough until you get to endgame and you can have all your stats where you can survive pretty well, and in this game it will be my first hardcore character, so stay tuned for that, and stay tuned for the frustration. But I'll see you in the next video. Peace.